Hi guys, so I'm doing a follow-up video, well, a second video to listening. I don't know if you heard the knocking at the end of the video and my distraction. My wildlings were beating on the door. So, yay, virtual learning with kids. Hey, by the way, how'd you guys' first week of virtual learning at Carter County go? I hope everything's chilled for you, not too crazy, because, you know, everything else is crazy in the world. Anywho, let's see if we can finish up listening. We talked about selective perception. There's also selective exposure that falls under selective perception. And basically, all that is that we tend to listen to speakers or information that falls or reinforces beliefs and values and ideologies that we already have. The book gives this example of news broadcast. Now, I'm going to state this, and I want to state before this that I am not doing this to start a political fight with anyone. This is the book's example, and I think it's a great example. You're watching cable television, there's multiple news outlets that you can get your information from. Now, even though the information pretty much is the same, well, the information comes from the same main source. Be it a speaker, a convention, a, debate. It starts with the same source. Okay. Now the book says Fox News tends to lean more with the Republican stance, point of view, and belief ideology. And then MSNBC follows the more liberal stance ideology. So even though they are starting with the same source of information, it could be a debate, it could be a speech, it could be an interview that they're breaking down. They're starting with the same main source, but they're speaking and giving information that falls more with what they believe, what they see, and what they hear, and what they want to project. Not so much project, but they want to give information in that same tone. Again, I didn't use these as a means to start a political fight. This was the example that the book gave, and I thought it was a pretty good way to give a great example of selective perception and selective exposure when it comes to public speaking and when it really comes to listening. Because it's true, you're not going to listen to someone, you're not going to actively listen to someone all the time whose ideas and views don't really match up with yours all the time. That's not to say that we're not open and want to hear other people's point of view, because I know as a listener, I want to hear all perspectives and all points of views to make a fully well-rounded case or, a thought, like, this is what I think. But I want to make sure I have all my information, even if some of the information doesn't really jive with what I feel. But that, in case, falls under selective exposure and selective perception. The book also kind of talks about why we choose not to listen, and they give a few not examples, but definitions of theories. And I'm just going to kind of rattle those off real quick. So we talked about external noise. Selective listening is you only intend to listen to information that is important or relevant to you. So if you don't think you need to listen to it, you don't really listen to it. So there's a reason why we don't listen. So that's selective listening. There's defensive listening. Defensive listening occurs when maybe if I do this, I won't look crazy and as crazy. When you anticipate what the speaker is going to say, especially if it's contrary to what you believe, feel, or value. So you listen so you can defend. That's pretty straightforward, defensive listening. So we have reasons why we don't listen. We have external noise, which is 1. We have selective listening, which is 2. And we have defensive listening, which is 3. Number 4 is cultural differences. And this comes into the fact that language is a barrier here. Not only language, but value systems are also barriers here. So cultural differences are another reason why some people actively choose not to listen. And then the last one is pretend listening. This is where sometimes we are distracted and we may fake listening to another. And this is where the comes into play. So that's 5 reasons the book goes on, and I'm pretty sure I put this in the chapter review, or it's in the PowerPoint presentation, on why we don't listen. There's external noise we just can't hear. Selective listening, we only hear what we want to hear. Defensive listening, we only hear because we want to say, hey, that's not true, or hey, that's not right. Cultural differences and fake listening. So active listening is the technique of observing and responding to a speaker's verbal and nonverbal messages with the goal of mutual understanding. So active listening is where we want to be. We want to go, in a perfect world, we would all be active listeners. Let's put it that way. In a perfect world, we would all want to be active listeners. What do I mean by this? We want to listen to all sides, and we to be able, for arguments or information, we want to hear everything that we can possibly hear be put on the table so we can make a well-informed decision. That's what we mean by active listening. Pretty straightforward, right? Okay. So this is a form of positive communication because, you know, we're choosing to listen. We're choosing to really just take in the verbal, the nonverbal, everything that we need to, and respond. That's positive communication. You know, you're not in it, you're not going, psh, I don't need to hear this. I know all there is to know, or I don't believe what this person says, or that person's a flake. You know, it's okay, I may not like what you have to say most of the time, but I'm going to listen. Or I would like to know your point of view on this subject. I'm going to listen. That's what we mean by active listening. You are actively deciding to encode and decode the verbal messages and the nonverbal messages, and to really take in the information. Now, ways to be an active listener. There's receiving and attending. So receiving is the physiological process of getting the message, and this involves your ears, your eyes, and other senses if the case so be. Attending to this message it refers to how we intake it to make the message meaningful to us. How do we intake it? How can we take it, what we are hearing, what we are seeing, what's going on here, and make it meaningful to us? The next step of active listening is understanding. So we talked about receiving and attending. Now it's part of understanding. This is where you interpret and assess meaning to the message that the speaker has given you. You know, and from that we can it's taken in with the context of new information on top of information we already know. So you kind of compile it together when it comes to understanding. You know, okay, well, I understand, I know what that means, but in context with this, I see how it can mean this. So far our steps are recalling and attending and understanding. The next step is responding, paraphrasing, and clarifying. This is where feedback can come in. Now, sometimes when you're in a public speaking thing, feedback's not really there, nor is clarification. But if you think about everyday communication, you can receive information, and it could be, oh, okay, I understand, verbal, or, well, I know you said this here, but could you clarify what that actually means in context to what you're referring to? You know, you can ask someone, oh, hey, did you mean, you said grab the ball. Did you, I'm really like, simple term here. Did you mean the blue ball or the green ball? You know, oh, you said to go grab that dress. Did you want the black dress or the purple dress? Or, hey, man, you said to get, you know, pick up these shoes. Which ones were you wanting? These Adidas or do you want these Yeezys? I'm sorry, I'm giving like really random, weird references here. But it's clarification. In speeches, you can't really be like, hey, sometimes there's Q&As at the end of presentations like that, but sometimes you don't have the luxury of being like, hey, that information you just said, can you really clarify that for me? But the feedback, it can be verbal and nonverbal. The verbal, yes, I understand, yes. Or the non, I don't know what they're talking about, Again, I'm giving weird extreme examples of this, but all this falls under steps. The very last step of active listening is recalling and remembering, and this is the final step of this process, and it involves your memory, being able to recall information. We're not going to be able to recall every bit of information we hear in a speech. We're not going to be able to recall every bit of information given to us in a lecture by a teacher. It's hard, but it's being able to pull information that we need. So say someone's telling us a how-to speech, how to change a tire. We may not remember every bit of information given, but we remember the gist and what we need to do to change that tire. Maybe someone's telling us how to bake a cake. Okay. We may not remember every single step, but we remember, the basics. Get this, heat this. This is what I'm telling you. You're recalling and you're remembering. Maybe someone is doing a tribute speech. You may not remember everything, but maybe you remember the aspects that come through, the humanitarian work, their life work, their legacy, whatever the case may be. You may not remember the year they were born. You may not remember where they grew up as a child, but you may recall important information. This is what we're talking about. This is just the final steps. So those steps, when it comes to be a better to really become an active listener, it involves receiving and attending, understanding, recalling, paraphrasing, clarification, that world, and memory. All that falls into active listening. And again, active listeners is where, in a perfect world, it would be nice for all of us to mutually listen. Even though we may not enjoy the speaker, we may not enjoy the topic, we may not enjoy what's going on, but we are choosing to hear the information, be respectful, and, learn the different perspectives. Active listening, in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen. This chapter finishes off on the pact of speech, or really the accountability and ethics. I'm not going to go into detail because, again, I have a PowerPoint presentation and a chapter review. What I really want you to get from this with the pact of speech, and, it breaks down, I think it was the three that Aristotle had talked about, which is practical wisdom. Let's see, what is it? Practical wisdom, expertise, and goodwill. Okay, folks. Generally, when it comes to public speaking, we listen to a person because they're honest. We listen to someone because of the information they have. Maybe they're a leading person in this field, or maybe they have years of training, or maybe they're in a position of power. We listen because we are putting our trust that the speaker is telling us the truth, that the speaker is giving us the information, the correct information that they have on hand, that they have the best interest at heart. This is what we're talking about when it comes to the ethics of public speaking. Now that, there are always cases of public speakers that don't have best interest and this or that, but, when I talked about I spurted off the three that Aristotle talked about. This is what he was talking about. Remember, Aristotle is one of the founding fathers of public speaking. One of the granddaddies of public speaking from ancient Greece. And he gives us these to go by. And they fall under, we listen because we want to. We listen because the speaker has something important to say. They have updated information. They have our best interests at heart. They have this or that, We don't walk into a situation to listen because we know we're getting lied to. Now, that's kind of on the upskirts of this, is that, we go to comedians, people watch comedians, they're like, well, comedians don't tell the truth all the time. Well, that's true. But we also go to comedians knowing that they're putting their emotions into what they present to us. Some comedians use stories from their life, and that's how they interject comedy to us, by relaying stories that have happened to them, the instances, how they responded, this and that. That's another in the path of being part of listening, is that we go to hear the human emotion. We go to hear, to see that, speakers, we have this responsibility. And as listeners, this is what we look for. Now, underneath all of this, the biggest no-no, because, when it comes to underneath all this too, you can paraphrase and quote people within your speeches. And we will talk about this more when we get to the persuasive speech section, because you have direct quotations required. The only thing that is a big no-no, and has always been a big no-no, is plagiarism. And I'm sure you have heard about it in school, and you will hear about it in any realm of education and work. And plagiarism is just taking someone else's work and claiming it as your own. Taking someone else's idea and claiming it as your own. That's not ethical. That's not your work. So when it comes to something like that, I ask you wholeheartedly to give credit where credit is due. Anyway, folks, like I said, I didn't want to dive too hard into what these three areas, the Aristotle. I'll just kind of give you a quick brief. Again, those are PowerPoint presentations and chapter reviews. I know that these two videos combined are long, but I really wanted to break down listening as much as I could. So, watch these videos. Don't be too bored to death. But listening is a big part of public speaking, not just hearing, but actually really listening. We have to take the effort to fully listen. Okay. Thank you all so much. Sorry for the distraction earlier when my kids were beating on the door. Yay, virtual teaching from home. Anyway, folks, if you have any questions or concerns over the parts of listening, feel free to contact me, email me, text me, message me, whatever the case may be, and I will respond to you. I hope that you have had a fabulous week, and until the next video, bye.